There's a medrash in the beginning of this week's parsha. Medrash says, "Vaydaber Hashem Moshe b'Midbar Sinai ba'il moyed be'echad lachodesh hasheni b'shana hashenis l'tzeisam me'eretz Mitzrayim lemor." Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, where did he say it? In the Midbar Sinai, in the oil moyed. Everyone asks. Everyone knows that Moshe Rabbeinu was in the Midbar. The Jewish people were in the Midbar. They were by the oil moyed. Where else would they be? So the Medrash says, like this. Says the Medrash, we learn from this pasuk that if a person wants to merit HaKadosh Baruch Hu talking to them, he needs to have certain characteristics. One of those characteristics is in Gemara as well, that a person has to make himself like a midbar. It wasn't just telling us where it happened, it told us a character trait of a person who will merit speaking to Hashem Yisbarach Shemai. He needs to make himself like a midbar. So you say, make yourself like a midbar. What does that mean to make myself like a midbar? Maybe that means, Gavriel, that a person should, poke themselves with a cactus. Maybe that means a person should die of thirst. Maybe it means that a person should walk endlessly and hallucinate things. That's not what it says. No. A person has to make themselves hefker kemidbar, ownerless like a midbar. Rav Shimon Schwab says, what does it mean to make themselves ownerless like a midbar? I have to make myself ownerless like a midbar. He says, you know what it means? Listen to this. He says, often a person will say a gewaldike idea, a massive chiddush, or in class they'll come up with a really good line. Everyone loves the line. Yeah? You know who said that line? No, it was my joke. So it says Rav Shimon Schwab, you know what it means to make yourself ownerless like a midbar? You can't be so hung up on making sure people know it was you who said it. You don't have to always, I was the one who said it. When a Rebbe says something in class, so he asks a question, okay? And asks, not everybody in the class can answer all the exact same time, so one person answers the question. He answers the question. And what do you have? You have one guy in the class who always has to say that I was going to say that, I was going to say that, or I said that. I said that. Didn't you hear me when I said that? That was my line. That was my joke. Says Rav Shimon Schwab, Nasa atzmai kehefker, hefker kemidbar. A person has to make themselves ownerless like a midbar. It doesn't make a difference. It's not such a major thing. Who said it? People talk. Sometimes a person talk so much, it's because it's like, if I'm not talking, do I truly exist? I'm like the forest, right? If the tree falls down in the forest and no one was there, so then, did it make a sound? A person sometimes think that if they don't make weird noises, they don't pipe up and say things randomly at different times, perhaps they themselves will assume that they no longer exist. So therefore, they need to constantly talk up. Constantly say something. My father, Zakheim Levracha, used to always say, he said, certain people, you think that they're very, very smart until they open their mouth. The moment that you opened up their mouth, they revealed, in fact, how not smart they were. You're so intelligent. Stop while it's going well. Stop before you get ahead of yourself. When it's going well, just stop. Good. Stay quiet. You know how many times? When I was in 8th grade, I had a math teacher. My math teacher. I was not into math in 8th grade. Fine, I was in a regular class. So what did I do? Nabuch. I loved to read. I was a big reader. So I had my textbook on my desk, of course. But behind my textbook, I had books. Every day I'd be reading something. Book, reading. Anyway, one day my 8th grade math teacher he comes over to me, and he sees I'm reading. Now, the whole time, of course, I never said a word in class because I'm reading my books. Why would I say a word in class? He says to me, Mr. Zakheim. I'm like, I'm going to get in so much trouble now. Mr. Zakheim, you're reading books during class? It must be that you know all the material very well. Now, I assumed he was being sarcastic. But then he said, and therefore, we should skip you ahead to the advanced math class because of how well you know it. And he wasn't being sarcastic. He literally skipped me ahead to the next class. I took my math regent in 8th grade instead of 9th grade, and it was great. All because I didn't say a word. He thought I must have been a genius, a math genius, because I knew it all. But a person, blah, 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 the moment he opens up his mouth, we think less and less and less until the person peters out at the bottom. There's nothing left of the value that we have for that person, chas v'shalom, because he has just spoken so much. We know that there is zero content in anything that he has to say. Now, while that's very, very admirable for a person to avoid that, and a good reason not to blah, blah, blah so much, Moshe Rabbeinu says, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, and this is being the sixth parasha, that you should be like a midbar. Be like a midbar. You don't have to take ownership of everything that you say. In fact, the Chassam Sofer very famously said that I'm very happy for people to quote the things that I say, but never say it in my name. I'm very happy for you not to say it in my name because I know you're all going to misquote me. This is more of a developed line, the way the Chassam Sofer said it. But he was very concerned. Better you don't say it was me, because who knows how you're going to say it, why you're going to say it. My Rebbe, Zal Gesundsein, has a similar issue. He says a lot of things and people misquote him. It's terrible. The Chazon Ish, I was reading last night, the Chazon Ish, he was once approached. Somebody said, "Didn't you say such and such about a certain halacha?" And the Chazon Ish said, "No, it's not true." So he said, "If it's not true, how come you don't make a statement so that everybody knows that you never said it?" He said, "Because if I made a statement about this that I never said, then people would assume all the other things that they hear that I did say, but I never said anything that they hear of all the things. So therefore, I say." This I'm not going to say, but I'm not going to say everything I never said, because then you'll think that the one thing I missed is something I actually said. A person should avoid necessarily taking credit for everything they say. You don't have to speak so much. As Hashem, when you get married, knowing the value of what not to say is almost as beneficial, perhaps even greater, than the value of what to say when you get married. To know what you're supposed to say when you come into the house, to know what not to say. When you say something to your kids before they go to sleep at night, or what not to say to your kids. To speak to your friends, or what not to say to your friends. A person has to be exceptionally careful about what they are not going to say. There's a very, very important Rashi in this week's parasha. The Rashi says that the family of Kehas was next to the family of Reuven. It says Rashi, it's in Pasuk Chavtes, Gimel Pasuk Chavtes, Mishpachas b'nei Kehas yachanu teimono, v'smuchen lahem degel Reuven. The camp of Reuven was right next to Kehas. Hachoinim teimono. Woe Nebuch to the Rasha and Nebuch to his neighbor. Lekach laku mehem. Because Kehas and Reuven were neighbors, therefore Dasan va'avirim asayim v'chamishim ish im karech va'dasan nimshachu imohem b'mach leikasam. The family of Reuven had Dasan and Aviram and 250 members, and they all were unfortunately destroyed and lost with Kairach because they got dragged after Kairach. Because Shua, they were friends with Kairach, and therefore they got dragged down with Kairach. And Kairach brought them all down. What apparently we understand from this is that without that, had it been that they wouldn't have had bad friends, Dasan Avirim, 250 people, they would have had beautiful Batim Ne'emanim B'Yisrael Shua, and they could have lived very successfully. They could have lived very, very successfully. And listen to this. You might think, I remember my brother Zal Gesundsein, he was once talking to a fellow who despised yeshiva like Nebuch. He despised those who want to spend their time doing the hardest of work, but the most enjoyable of work, of sitting and learning Torah. So this person was saying, like this, why in the world do you think that so many of you people should be learning Torah? Learning Torah. Torah. Go get a job. You, LGFN. You lazy good for nothing. Go get a job. So my brother said to him, why should people not go learn Torah? So the guy said, listen. If you look at the tribes of Israel, there are how many tribes of Israel? 12. Okay. 12 tribes of Israel. Of those 12 tribes, we have Shevet Levi. Shevet Levi is designated to learn Torah. And maybe you'll throw in even Yisachar. Even Yisachar, learning Torah. Really, Zvulun too. Well, Levi, Yisachar, learning Torah. That's only 2 out of 12. 2 out of 12. That is 1/6. Should you have more than 1/6 of the Jewish people learning Torah? Why is it that all of you decide, Shua, that you should be going to yeshiva to learn Torah? So my brother said to him, so how many people should be learning Torah? He said, well, there's like 2 million religious Jews. 2 out of 12. 1/6. No more than that. Got to close up all these kailulim and yeshivas. So my brother said this guy was a very liberal-minded fellow. My brother said to him, how can you say only 2 million Jews? There are at least 15 million Jews in the world. We'll take our 1/6 of 15 million Jews. We'll put them all into kailulim. And then we'll work on your numbers. When we have 1/6 of 15 million Jews in kailul, then we'll discuss your problem. Right? 1/6. Yisachar Zvulun. Oh, Levi, only those can go learn Yisachar. You'd think, what's Pshat Yisachar became such a steiger? Yisachar is like the person identified with learning Torah. Levi also. But identified with learning Torah. You imagine when he grew up as a little kid, he was a real nerd. Right? He was a real nerd. When everybody else went out to go play ball, you had Shimon and Levi. Oh, sorry. But Levi maybe was learning and playing ball. But Shimon, he hit it rocket way out to left field. He sent it away. He was like the ace of Kunstlinger of our time. Yeah? But the person able to hit a grand slam every time. And then you'd go out there, Don was strong too. Yeah, Naphtali was fast. Yeah, everyone. But Yisachar was probably a nerd. He was probably a nerd. When everybody else was learning, Yisachar was playing sports, Yisachar probably went to go learn. But that's not Pshat. That's not Pshat. Listen to this. Natan, listen to this Rashi. Moshe, Aaron, their spot was right next to Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. Says Rashi, V'suchalem degel machan Yehuda, v'achodim olav Yisachar v'Zvulun. Says Rashi, Toiv le'tzadik, Toiv le'shchenai. You know why Yisachar, Zvulun, Yehuda, they were such steigers? Levisha Yushchenav Shal Moshe. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do all day? I don't know. He was like a king sort of thing. What was he doing? No. Says Rashi, Shaya Isaac B'Torah. He learned all day. That's what he did. He was busy learning. So therefore, his best friends, his neighbors, saw him there, Shua, doing what? Learning all day. They got very influenced by that. Yisachar, Zvul, and Yehuda became major steigers because who was their neighbor, Yosef? Moshe Rabbeinu. They saw Moshe Rabbeinu, Oisek B'Torah, therefore they were also Oisek B'Torah. You hear this? Good friends make good friends. Bad friends make bad friends. You notice, you never know if this is being shared, and I'll have to make Yehuda give that decision, but you notice that whenever one person puts his head down, it's always the guy next to him who has his head down, or 3 guys in a row who have their heads down. Is it always a coincidence that the head down guys are always next to each other? On the other hand, anyone who sits next to Shua Shifrin never has their head down. No, I'm good. Yeah, it's okay. The noise is unnecessary. We'll make believe we knew that you made a noise. But Shua Shifrin, people next to him are never having their heads down. They never have their heads down. A guy sits there. A guy sits in a Yoav king. Never has his head down. Chavrusas by the Pirkei Avos program. It never has his head down. Now somebody just put their head down. But a person has their head down. Oy l'rasha chas v'shalom. But oy l'shchenai. On the other hand, toiv l'tzadik, toiv l'shchenai. If you have good friends, they encourage you, and major things happen. It's not just by coincidence that we have Yosef Koshenfar sitting next to Natan Cohen and very much steiging and learning. They're steiging and learning. Okay, maybe this week, Shrach HaMaises. But, Be'ez Hashem, they're right next to the table in the Beis Medrash. It's not a surprise that you have an Natan Tzemach steiging this entire year. He sits next to Rabbi Edelman. What do you think is going to happen from that? Toiv l'tzadik, toiv l'shchenai. A person who is sitting next to a steiger is going to be influenced by that steiger. Good friends are extremely important. You go out one night and you have a neighbor next door. You see every night The neighbor goes outside, he goes out, you go out. He goes out, you go out. You wonder, where's my neighbor going? So one night you say to him, Eli, why are you going outside today? And Eli says, well, why are you going out? He said, well, I'm just going to harbor. Then why are you going out? Harbor? I'm going to night seder. Every night you go to night seder? You go to night seder more often than I go to Harbor Fitness. That's amazing. You go every single night, but you work all day. How could it be that you still have time? What do you mean? I would never miss my night seder. Never miss my night seder. So is it going to be Toiv L'Tzadik, Toiv L'Shchenai, Oy L'Rasha, Oy L'Shchenai? They were right next to each other. And what's going to happen in just a short while is you'll have the guy next door who was going to harbor. He's showing up at night seder. Toiv L'Tzadik, Toiv L'Shchenai. You have some other situations. A person goes to a certain shul, as we know. Now, but it happens to be like 3 days in a row. I had different sources of how terrible it is talking in shul. Mamish, like old sources. You go to a certain person, Nebuch in the shul, talk. Nebuch, if such a place could even be called a shul instead of a public school that happens to have Jewish people inside. But if a person goes to a shul that's just talking inside of, who knows what could happen to people in that shul? It starts with this, and we know, somebody who is in that shul will succumb quickly to Nebuch, what's going on there. A person, if you want to go to a shul that doesn't have to brand itself as a no-talking shul, but is simply a kollel in the neighborhood, which everybody knows what you're supposed to do during davening. You go to a Muslim shul, that's the place I would go to if I was here in Flatbush, to be able to go there if they started maybe half hour later in Shabbos morning. But if a person wants to go to a place that is a place of influencing yourself to be great, toiv l'tzadik, toiv l'shchenim. There was a person here in the beginning of the shmuz who was talking a lot. He moved to another place, to a place where another person wasn't talking, and now that place has become a talking spot in the Beis Medrash. You think about the type of influence that a person brings to their section. A person has to realize there's a tremendous effect. Tremendous effect that one person has on the very next person. It could be instantaneous, or it could take some time. In Eretz Yisrael, Bez Hashem, you get to be in a room with a lot of roommates. Or you have a few roommates. I remember my roommate. It happened to be Rabbi Milstein's first cousin, Simi Markowitz. Yeah, was my roommate. He was there. Literally, you never saw him by his bed. He always was learning. Late at night, early in the morning, I never saw, maybe being a storm. I used to see him sometimes by his bed passed out. But otherwise, he went to sleep at night, he wasn't there. He woke up in the morning, he wasn't there. You see something like that. It doesn't take so long for you to be like, oh, what in the world am I doing here? How come I'm not like that? This is amazing. He's constantly in the Beis Medrash. Right? You have another guy, he walks in the Beis Medrash, he walks in, and you go over to him, and you say, everything okay? It's like, yeah, I went to sleep on time last night. I don't know what happened. Like, sure you went to sleep on time. Yeah, I did. I'm telling you, I didn't go out at all. And the guy comes over, he's like, well, we had a great time last night. Shh, right? A person is influenced by those people around him. It could be very, 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 very scary. Very, very scary. I want to finish on a thought. Today is Yom Yerushalayim. Now, in the Yeshivish world, we don't exactly celebrate Yom Yerushalayim. We obviously celebrate the fact that Yerushalayim was returned after 19 years. Not a single Yid was able to go into the old city for 19 years. From 1948 to 1967, not a single Yid was able to go into the old city. It's scary. And it happens to be a topic in history that I really was very interested in. To know all those, I have a book here that's called The 28th of Iyar. It was written as a diary from Rabbi Emanuel Feldman, who should live and be well. He's a very, very old Yid. His brother is the Yeshiva Ner Yisrael. And he talks a lot about the first day. He got to be one of the first people to go to the Kaisel after 19 years. He himself had never been there. And he talks about it. It's so dramatic and so emotional. It's his diary about being there. And in fact, if you listen to any of the recordings or you see any of the videos of the soldiers that went there, we're talking about soldiers who were from families that for 100 years didn't say a bracha, didn't wear a yarmulke, didn't wear tzitzis. I went to Camp Simcha. I worked there for a number of years. We had boys in Camp Simcha who came from Israel. They had never spoken to a Yid with a yarmulke before. Never. They had never spoken to, they're from Israel. They had never spoken to a Jew with a yarmulke before they came to Camp Simcha. You know, it's scary. So you had Yidden in 1967 going to the Kaisel, they had nothing, no Yiddishkeit. And they get to the Kaisel, and every single one of them is crying. They have no idea why they're crying. They go up to the Kaisel, they're crying, they're kissing it, they're touching every stone. And when the chief rabbi of the army gets up, and he says, everybody together, make a bracha v'shechiyanu, the whole entire army there on day one, this is day 3, I think, of the 6-day war. But day 1, they get there and they're all saying the bracha of Shechiyanu b'Shemu Malchus with the greatest of joy that the Temple Mount, Harabayas biyadenu. The greatest, most expansive kiruv happened right then. Eshet Torah, or Sameach, these yeshivas boomed. 1967, a tremendous turnaround of people to Judaism right then. So how come the whole country is not religious now? What happened? Why is the whole Eretz Yisrael not one tremendous religious country? 6 days in June, in 1967, miracles happened before their very eyes. And where'd they all go? Where'd they all go? I mean, what do we have now? Obviously, you know that I haven't read the news since November 4th, 2025, but it doesn't take rocket scientists to know what's been going on. It's not like everyone's come back. In fact, they're still trying to shut down the yeshivas, trying to force young people who are learning in yeshivas, people put them in jail for wanting to learn in yeshiva. If they don't show up at a draft office which is not designed till this day, no matter what, has never been designed to protect a ben Torah, and still till this day, what happened? What happened? It's a good question, no? What happened is in the end of the day, Oile Rasha, Oile Shchenai. People did not say, I want to change my life right now, and I'm going to go learn more about Torah and surround myself by Fruma Torah Yidden. Like Rabbi Milstein's beautiful idea that he said, and I'll conclude with this. He said this in the Shabbaton 2 years ago. Esav was looking for Yaakov. And Yaakov's hiding. Where was Yaakov hiding? He was hiding in the yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever for 14 years. Esav must have been really, really bad at the game of hide and seek when they were little children, not to know that his very learning Torah brother must have gone to yeshiva. Like, why didn't you check that first place? Said Rabbi Milstein, Esav refused to check that one place, because if Esav had gone into there, he would have been changed. He wouldn't have been Esav Harasha anymore. He would have been transformed. He would have been Toiv L'Tzadik, Toiv L'Shchenoid. He would have been a totally different person. Instead, Esav stayed outside. When he comes out, I'll go find him. Then I'll go find him. I'm too afraid. And therefore you have a book like this, the 28th of Iyar. Chas v'shalom, not meaningless, because we have tons and tons of Frum Yidden who come from that. Tons and tons of Frum Yidden. But at the end of the day, we're not all back yet. We daven that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should surround us. B'chaver toiv, b'shachin toiv. You should know what you say in davening. You daven every single day for a good neighbor. Not like the ad. But you daven every day for a good neighbor. You daven every day for a good friend. And when you have that, Be'ez Hashem, you will be Toiv L'Tzadik, Toiv L'Shchena. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless us all to be surrounded with the best people. You should have a beautiful Shabbos, Be'ez Hashem.